331 million people in the U.S. Of those 331, approximately 18 million are veterans. Approximately 500,000 of them are World War II veterans. The largest amount of veterans are the Vietnam veterans, about 6 million. There's approximately 2 million women veterans, with that number increasing each and every day. Today we gather here in this virtual kitchen to honor the women and men who serve in the National Guard, Coast Guard, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, both active and reservists. On behalf of Stacy Petrover, the president of New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley Hospital, and the entire healthcare team, I want to thank you for spending part of your Veterans Day here with us. My name is Paul Butler. I'm the hospital's chaplain coordinator. I'm honored to be able to be here on this special Veterans Day Zoom presentation with Chef Emily Berner, who will lead us today in our teaching kitchen. Chef Emily is our culinary nutrition coordinator. Many of you know her, and you know of her expertise work and the great culinary experience that we're going to have today. I would also like to thank our Diversity and Inclusion Task Force, which is headed up by one of our directors, Manny Paris. And a shout out to two of my fellow veterans on that task force, both Devon and Chris. Veterans come from all walks of life, both different social and economic backgrounds, different family makeup, different genders and gender fluid, different ethnic and religious traditions. But here at the hospital, here at New York-Presbyterian, we celebrate and practice diversity and inclusion every single day, and especially today with our veteran families. So at this time, without standing, I invite us to sit upright, to place our hand over our heart, and I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Again, my name is Paul Butler, and I serve here as the hospital chaplain coordinator. But before that, a few years before that, I served in the United States Navy from 1990 to 1997. During that time, I served on 2 U.S. nuclear naval submarines, the USS Omaha and the USS Olympia. And in response to that, I don't know if you can see it, I've got my mug today, my U.S. submarine mug. It doesn't always come up very well on the Zoom, but it has the dolphins there. I was a fire control technician, FTG, actually. The G stood for guns. At one time, there was deck guns aboard submarines. When they removed them, they also changed the rate to just fire controlmen. Now, my job was to track and target any contact in the surrounding water. I worked closely with sonar and torpedo room. I sat in the control room where I monitored, tracked, and manned the periscope when we were at periscope depth, and I worked directly with a weapons officer. I went to basic in Great Lake, Illinois, Company 914, ET-1 Harriman, my company commander. My submarine and electronic training was in Groton, Connecticut. It was there that I took a billet to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. I would spend the next 4 years there. For 2 years, I'd be on the USS Omaha. And then we took her and decommissioned her in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. I was fortunate to get a billet back to Pearl Harbor, where I reported to the USS Olympia. And on that, I received the National Defense Service Medal and some other medals from the U.S. government. But from King Neptune himself, I received the Order of Shellback, of Golden Shellback, the Order of the Spanish Main, the Domain of the Golden Dragon, the Order of the Ditch, and I'm 2 away from the Order of the Sparrow, but I was never a blue or a red nose. Now, what those means are somewhat of a kind of a technical term that's used in the U.S. Navy. And there's certain ceremonies that took place or did not take place. I can neither confirm nor deny that those things happened. And if that means something to you, then that's great. And if it doesn't, well, unfortunately, no explanation can be given at this time. That said, I have many close family members who served in the armed services as well. My father was a corpsman in the Army. I need to give a shout out to my dad, who I think might be on this call right now, on this Zoom meeting right now. My Uncle George, he served in the U.S. Coast Guard. Two of my brothers, Stephen and Jonathan, both retired from the military, Navy and Army, respectively. Both brothers had families while they served. And I saw firsthand the toll that it took on them.
Connectivity, like when we have it home. So that's why
that's okay.
I think I
Let's
can't
make sure
hear
everybody's
it.
muted for a second, please. Thank you. I saw the gift, and I see the gift that military life has on them and their families as well. Military life has never been easy. And being a part of a military family takes a certain amount of heroic virtue, not just for the veterans, but for their families, the spouses, their children. There's no easy way to get through a military family. And because of that, I would say let's not be quick to judge any of our military families and their makeup. We pray for each of our veterans and their families, and we're called there to support them, to care for, and to have an open line of communication with them. Most veterans served without question. It's up to us to allow them to continue to serve without question, not constantly judging or questioning them. They deserve our support, not our condemnation. Respect, empathy, teamwork, innovation, responsibility, excellence, and I would add attention to detail are things that all veterans bring to the workplace. That is why I'm proud to self-identify here as a veteran at New York-Presbyterian Hospital. And if there's any employees watching, I encourage you to self-identify through Workday. I genuinely believe that after 6 years in the U.S. Navy, that I could not work at any institution that did not celebrate these core values. As the hospital's chaplain coordinator, I have the opportunity every day to serve patients, families, and staff. And that is my way, my answer to call for service. I'm also fortunate to oversee a group of volunteers for the pastoral care team, many who are also veterans, so that they can answer their call to serve as well. While in the Navy, my training emphasized to always be ready to answer the call whenever and wherever it may be. Our hospital makes respect, empathy, teamwork, innovation, responsibility, and excellence a part of everyday culture. The hospital knows the importance of reaching out and involving the community. This is why I'm fortunate to be both part of the Montrose VA and also the Yorktown Veteran Task Force. As a hospital, we are committed to the community because the community is committed to us. It's a privilege to work here, and I'm honored that the hospital has commissioned. You can see in if I can get this right, you can see the virtual background, this emblem here. It's a coin, and again, I apologize if it's upside down. I apologize if it doesn't come out as well on Zoom, but here is the front and back. These are coins that were commissioned for all veterans. You can also see the pin possibly here, recognizing all veterans for their service. Now, if you wouldn't mind, if you could indulge me, I have to share at least a few food military stories since we're here for Veterans Day food extravaganza. Now, whether you called it the chow hall, whether it was KP duty, whether it was the mess, every person in the military service had to work in it. And let me tell you, no matter what you called it, it was a mess. And this is very true on board submarines. Now, you should understand that I was a highly trained fire control technician, as I said before. I was trained in onboard computers, target motion analysis, advanced electronics, held a top secret clearance. I was knowledgeable and tasked to manage nuclear weapons aboard of nuclear submarines. I had a very large ego, and here I was, no offense to Emily, taking orders from the cook. And I thought, what is going on here? What did I get myself into? And when I say that we were working for the cook, it wasn't even the fun cooking part. Instead, it was going into the reefer, to the refrigerator, to get out these 10 cans, which were 10-inch cans that we had. And then it was putting those 10-inch cans back because the cook decided to change the menu. It was about taking all the stores, all the food for a long submarine deployment. And we had to carry so much food that oftentimes we'd have to store the food in the berthing area where we slept. So literally, you'd be sleeping next to your food. and it was cleaning. And yes, I mean cleaning. We had an area where we shot out the trash aboard submarine. We had to compact it and shoot it out. And it was a job that, let's just say, nobody wanted. And I will not go into more detail because this is a cooking show. I don't want to ruin anybody's appetite at this point. We also had to serve the crew. Now, it's a small area in the galley. And so they would tell us, they would sit and they would tell us what they wanted to eat, and we would go and bring it back to them. Now, the best part with all this, with this cleaning, with this removal of trash, was setting up for food, for all the meals. On top of that, we also had to do all of our duties in our division. So we had to go back to our division and do all that work. And to put it lightly, it was not a fun time. But it probably was one of the most wisest experiences I ever was a part of. Now, on board, as you can imagine, there was no sunrise or sunset. You stood watch for about 6 to 8 hours, and then you worked for 6 to 8 hours. And then you would get some sleep, and then do it all again. Now, in between that, you'd be woken up for drills, every kind of drill you can imagine, fire drills, nuclear drills, deep submergence drills, all sorts of drills. But the one constant were the meals. No light, no fresh air, no sense of time, no date or location, but you had the meals. Because the galley prepared the meals 4 meals a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinners, and mid-rats, or the midnight rations, kind of a leftovers. And so every 6 hours you had a meal. It was a meal that gave you a real sense of time. Now, you might have to wake up and have lunch, and then go to sleep and after breakfast, but at least you had some sense of time. Now, you literally might not know where you were in the world because a lot of the crew members didn't have a need to know. So they were just sailing along. They didn't even know where they were, but they knew what time of day it was because of the meal. You also, through working in the galley, got to know every single crew member, what they liked, what their personalities, who they were. The other day in preparation for this, I took out an old crew list. And I was going through the list, looking at some of the men that I had served with. And I can remember it literally as it was yesterday. There was just gentleman, FTG1, now Chief Glenn Evans. He loved and taught me how to take a bowl, you put a nice big chunk of chocolate cake in there, and then fill the bottom of the bowl with milk. That's the only way I eat it to this day. There was a gentleman, he was actually a mess specialist, first class, Hill. Believe it or not, he was somehow able to stay in shape on board, and he was a big bodybuilder. But all he drank, the only thing I ever saw him take into his body was coffee, black coffee. And I know because he'd always say, "Hey, Butler, give me some black coffee." There was one of the torpedo men. He was in his glory because he loved powdered eggs. Emily, I don't know, maybe you could do something good with powdered eggs. I don't know, but he loved them. And we all loved it, as long as it lasted, soft served ice cream. That was our big treat. But I remember vividly all these guys and all the images come back to the galley, come back to the mess where we sat and where we ate. And so I think it truly was a wise thing for the submarine community and a lot of the military to do, because it truly, by starting from the bottom, you learned humility and service. I think within a lot of our kitchens, we can learn humility and service. And that's a great gift to be able to carry wherever we go. I said at the beginning, there's 331 million people in the US. And of those 331, approximately 18 million are veterans. There's approximately 500,000 that are World War II veterans. Again, the largest group is about 6 million for Vietnam vets. Approximately 2 million of them of veterans are female veterans, that number growing. Women and men who are serving again in the National Guard, the Coast Guard, Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, both active and reserve. They didn't do it so that they could become veterans someday. They didn't do it because they wanted a free meal at Applebee's. They did it for various reasons. Some were drafted. Others enlisted. Some used the military to get out of poverty. Some used it for education. Now, some chose it for the adventure, and some had it chosen for them. Some veterans look back and say, wow, that was a great, really fun time. Other veterans still struggle with the emotional impact it had on them. We're taking a moment today to literally open our kitchen on this Veterans Day to honor all veterans. I hope, I pray that each of us will open our own kitchens, our own hearts, to listen to our veterans, not only thanking them for their service, but also inviting them to continue to serve us with their gifts that they have learned in their time in the armed services. I'd like to thank you for listening to this portion. I want everybody to know we will be taking questions and reading comments in a few minutes. So please feel free to type in the chat box. And now I'd like to turn it over to Emily in our teaching kitchen. Emily?
Thank you so much, Paul. Wow, thank you for sharing your experience. And we are so grateful to all our veterans. We want to thank all of our heroes by celebrating and cooking together. So today we're going to be making some healthy makeovers of some classic mess hall recipes. You may be familiar with Senate bean soup and sloppy Joe sandwiches. So that's on our menu. We're also going to be making a festive red, white, and blueberry dessert. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get cooking. I'm going to start off by chopping our onion. Then we're going to start with the soup. And if you're following along, you all have a PDF of this packet in your inbox. And if you don't, we'll make sure you have all these recipes before you leave. We're going to start by chopping our onion. We're going to add some celery and a little bit of garlic. Get that going in our pot. I haven't done anything really ahead of time. So we're going to be going through this step by step to make sure that you can really make this at home. The only thing I've done is I've heated up a little bit of vegetable stock here in the back. And that's just to make sure that we end our program in a timely fashion. We have plenty of time for questions. So again, please remain muted throughout the presentation. And if you have any questions, pop them into the chat box and Catherine will share them with us. Thanks for tuning in. So we're going to start by heating up our pot. And I always get the pot nice and hot before adding anything to it. A lot of people will add oil first, but I like to get it hot and then add my oil and onion. So whenever you're working with your onion, here's the top, here's the bottom. Just make sure that you have a good grip on your knife. We're using a chef's knife today, and I have a good controlled grip here. And I'm gonna curl my fingers just to make sure that they stay out of the way. All right, so curling your fingers, slice through the top, through the papery exterior, a little bit through the bottom. This is usually the portion of the program where I start crying in front of everybody. There's no good tricks to that. So I took that off. I'm just going to cut this right in half by making a tunnel. Again, keeping my fingers out of the way. And we're going to go ahead and peel off this papery exterior. We don't want that in our soup. So a good trick, if you ever have a hard time peeling onions, you know, sometimes these skins can get really, really stuck. This one seems to be peeling well, but a good trick is to actually soak your onions in some water before you work with them. And I'm just going to put this in my compost bowl over here. The reason that helps is because the water kind of softens the exterior and the paper, and it can kind of peel right off. So you saw that was really easy. Here's the top, here's the bottom, and let's just slice right through that. So I'm kind of making long lines here. Okay, so kind of like creating the pages of a book. It's still attached at the root, right? So let's do that one more time. Again, tucking my fingers as I go, cutting through the onion, but leaving the bottom, I'd say the bottom sixth of the onion is still intact. Okay, so now we're going to cut this into a little dice. Again, curling the fingers, slicing right across. And it gets a little tippy here towards the base, so just knock it over. Use a larger surface area and cut around the root. All right, do that one more time. And again, this is a soup, so the great thing about soup is everything can just be kind of chopped up and thrown in the pot and sauteed together, and it's going to be really, really yummy. So I'm using a bench scraper to kind of scrape all this up. Let's add a little bit. You can use olive oil or butter just about a teaspoon or so to coat the bottom of the pan. Of course, here at the Chef Peter X. Kelly Teaching Kitchen at New York-Presbyterian Hudson Valley, we try to make everything just a little healthier. So we're going to be using olive oil today instead of butter, which is the traditional way of making this soup. So let's go ahead. We're going to saute that onion. This recipe calls for 2 onions, so I chopped the other one up so you wouldn't have to watch me do that all over again. Pop that right in the pot and give it a good stir. So this is a very simple way to start any soup recipe, just with by sauteing your onions, building in, layering in that flavor right from the bottom, right? Already starting to smell really good. All right, our next step is going to be to add, who knows what this is, our celery. So our celery, this is grown here at our very own organic garden. It has these big, beautiful leaves. Often people will tear those leaves off and throw them away, but they're really flavorful. So save them and throw them into your soup too. We're going to kind of bunch them together here. And again, I'm going to work right across, slicing this into little teeny tiny pieces, right? So everything should be just about pea-sized. Right? You can see there, right? So we're going to cut everything up about that same size. And then we're going to add some garlic to this as well. So again, I'm going to use these leaves. A lot of people will throw them out, but they're really, really good. And they're good for you too. They've got lots and lots of fiber. So I'm just kind of bunching the leaves together as I go and gliding. You can notice this motion takes a little bit of practice, but eventually you'll get it. All right, you can also practice mincing, working from the tip to the heel of the knife with your hands flat on top. Just give it a nice rough chop. So if you're not comfortable with that sliding, you can do it this way. All right, let's pop this in here with our onion and get this sauteed. So this is almost a mirepoix. Mirepoix is a very traditional way of making most soups that starts with carrots, onion, and celery. For this recipe, we're just using the onion and the celery, and we're actually going to throw in some garlic as well. All right. Smells really, really nice. And I'm going to show you what's going on in here too. So you won't miss a step. All right, let's add our garlic. So one of the reasons I add the garlic a little bit later than the onion is because garlic tends to burn if you add it earlier on in the stages of cooking. So this way, my onion is slightly translucent, just a little bit soft. And this is the right moment to add the garlic, right? So not at the start of cooking, because your garlic will burn and that will taste really bitter. Nobody wants that in their soup. So you can use the heel of your hand and the knife in your body weight, kind of lift up and press down. Or I want to show you a safer way. You can use the bottom of the can, just give it a good smash. It's not so noisy. All right. So a good smash with the bottom of the can is safer than using the knife, but you can do whatever you're most comfortable with. That's always the safest thing. So we pop that little paper off. Now we just have our garlic clove. Let's take off the bottom here, that little root piece. And same thing here. We're just gonna go ahead and mince this, practicing that rocking motion, right? So you're really pushing through as you cut. And then again, you can practice your mincing. All right, so you just want everything, especially the garlic, to be nice and small. Smells really good. Pop that in. Okay, so there's our garlic. You can see nicely minced. And we're ready to add this to our onion and our celery that's already getting some nice flavor in this pot. Okay, so let's let that cook just for a minute or so until it softens just a bit. And the next thing we're going to be adding to this soup is some of our other recipes. I'm using almond milk today. It's a non-dairy milk made from almonds. However, you can use regular milk, soy milk, as long as it's unsweetened. That's really important. You don't want to add any sugar to the soup. So we're going to be adding our beans. These are our navy beans. Many of you may not know that cannellini beans are actually also called navy beans. So whenever I'm working with beans from a can, I always put them in a sieve or a little colander and wash them under running water. So I do that because sometimes these beans are packed in liquid with salt, and I always try to minimize our salt if we can. So using low sodium varieties, or, you know, if you can find beans that are made with no salt, that's even better, but often they have salt in them. So give them a nice little rinse, freshen them up, right? So we're going to be throwing that into our pot with some bay leaves. You can find these in your spice section at the grocery store. We happen to grow these here. Very proud of our garden. And we're going to be adding a couple of other things as well. I forgot to mention the cooked potato, also from our garden. So you can either bake this potato in the oven if you want ahead of time, or what I did today, I actually just sliced it in half, put it on a plate and popped it in the microwave for about 5 minutes. And it's nice and soft and perfect to be added to this soup. So we're gonna add those two things with a little bit of vegetable stock and the non-dairy milk we're using today. Of course, feel free to use regular milk or whatever you like. So in go the bay leaves, in go the beans, in go the potatoes. All right, our milk, as well as our vegetable stock. Now remember, I mentioned that I kept that nice and hot back here. The reason I did that was so that we could speed things along today. So whenever you're working with a hot stock, it takes less time for it to come to a boil, right? Makes sense. So let's pop that in there. All right, oh, it smells so good. Okay, let's give that a good stir. Make sure all of the flavors get incorporated. And we're gonna add one more thing to this soup. You have a choice here. You can either use liquid smoke, or you can use, this is our smoked paprika. So the point is we wanna try to impart the soup with a nice smoky flavor. So that's why we're using these today. So you can use whichever one you prefer. Let's try the liquid smoke. It's very, very concentrated. So a little bit goes a long way. Start with a little and you can always add more later. All right, and then the final touch on this soup will be to add some chopped parsley. So let's get that ready. And then you see how quickly this came together, right? It's almost done. Okay, we're just gonna let that simmer. I'm actually gonna scooch it to the back here so that we have a little more space to start our next recipe, which is these sloppy joes. Everybody loves those. Okay. Beautiful. All right, so what am I looking at in this pot? I'm seeing the bits of potatoes, the beans, the onion, the pieces of celery. It's got this lovely opaque kind of quality because of the milk. So it has kind of like a nice milky look to it. And as that is gonna come to a boil, let's pop the lid on it so it helps. I always bring soups to a boil and then I turn it down to let them simmer. So let's bunch together our parsley and cut that up. This is gonna be our finishing touch. Now, whenever I'm using herbs that are like nice, soft, leafy herbs, I always add them at the end of cooking, right? As opposed to like rosemary or thyme or oregano. Those are a little bit tougher, kind of woodsy herbs. So I add those at the start. Okay. All right, let's pop that into a little bowl so we have it ready when our soup is done. So that concludes our first recipe. And I just want to check in with our audience here. Catherine, how is everybody doing? Do we have any questions so far?
Thank you, Chef Emily. The chat box has been very active, and a shout out to Cedric O'Connor, our Human Resources Vice President, who said, "Thank you for your dedicated service to our nation," commenting on all veterans. It's been very inspiring to see everyone's comments. Also from the Diversion and Inclusion Committee, Tanya, Simone, JD, all praising our veterans, including our employees who are veterans. Donna and Deborah are also remembering their fathers today, and so many others are commenting on Veterans Day. Paul, any response from you? I saw that you had a reaction to the navy beans.
I just thought the navy beans was a very good choice. That was just my own take on that.
Thanks, Paul.
And Chef Emily, I would add that George made a comment on using dried beans because there's no salt.
That's a great comment. Thank you, George. And thanks for tuning in. So if you wanted to use dried beans, absolutely, it's a great option to cook your beans from scratch if you have the time. Certainly, you know, it's a good thing to do. So the way you would do that is soak them in a bowl of water, and overnight, they need a good 8-hour soak at least, and then strain that water off and just boil them in water just like pasta until you fish out 3 or 4 of them. It usually takes about 30 or 40 minutes, sometimes longer, depending on the size of the bean. And then you can see if they smush. So if they smush, they're done. So that's the simplest way to cook beans. If you are going to add salt to that water, add it at the end of your cooking, because otherwise the beans will get a little bit tough. So great comments and great questions. And thank you everybody for all of your remarks. So just one more note about the Senate bean soup that we're making today. The tradition actually dates back to the early 20th century and was begun by 2 US senators who expressed their fondness for this soup. So according to the US Senate website, Senate bean soup is still on the menu at the Senate every single day, which I find remarkable. So I guess it's a good one, right? People will never tire of this soup. And then the beans that we're using today, I love to use beans in soup. They're extremely high in protein, 9 grams of protein for half a cup of beans. They're low calorie, they contain folate, iron, copper, as well as some potassium. So that high fiber content in the beans, 6.4 grams in just half a cup, it really helps to improve blood sugar control, and also serves as prebiotic. Many of us have heard of probiotic, serves as prebiotic material, which helps to support the entire gut system. So fun facts about beans. All right, so let's get started on our healthy sloppy joe. And the way that we're making this slightly healthier today, often sloppy joes are made with beef. So we're gonna lighten it up. We're gonna use some, you probably can't tell what this is, but we're gonna use some ground turkey. So it's gonna be really, really delicious. We're gonna add some ketchup, barbecue sauce, a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, and some mustard to really build a lot of flavor into this. So let's start off by getting our pan hot here. Okay, I have it on a medium heat, and we're gonna start just by sauteing the onion. So I, again, chopped up our onion in preparation, so you wouldn't have to watch me do that again. So adding just enough oil to coat the bottom of the pan. When you're storing your oil, you see I have it here next to the stove, but it's best to store your oils in a cool and dark place. So a cabinet or, you know, somewhere out of the sunlight. And then I just take out what I need for the week and pop it up here. So light and heat will start to break down oils. So they won't be as fresh tasting, and the nutrition of the oil won't be as, you know, the integrity of the oil will break down. So I like to send a little onion spy, see if there's a nice sizzle around it. So that looks good. And let's start by sauteing this. As soon as you get onions into a pan, it smells amazing. Might even need a bigger pan today, but let's see. I think we'll make do with this. It's gonna be good. All right. So while that's going, I'm gonna teach you how to seed and chop a bell pepper. So for this recipe, we're using a red pepper, but you could also use a yellow or an orange pepper. I wouldn't use the green pepper because they have a very different taste. The other ones are a little bit sweeter, so you can make that substitution if that's what you have. So we're gonna go ahead and chop off the top. And don't worry, we're gonna use all that good stuff too. So you can see here, right? The seeds are connected, usually at 4 or 5 spots. And what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna turn my body towards you so you can see, I'm just gonna use the top quarter of my knife and disconnect the seeds from the exterior. So there's 1, there's 2, 3, and you can see I'm turning it each time, right? 4. So now I've disconnected it. I'm gonna put my hand in there, twist, that's important, and pull. So you get all those seeds out in one shot, no seeds in your pepper. Let's get rid of that. All right. And like I said, we're gonna use as much of this pepper as possible. So let's cut around the top here and make sure that we only discard the stem. Okay. Our soup is boiling back here. You can see from all the steam. So I'm just gonna turn it down and let that simmer so all the flavors have time to hang out together. This soup is even better the next day, honestly. So let's chop that. Hope you can all see that. There you go. Okay, so I'm just cutting it into small pieces, just about the same size as the onion, right? It's nice and easy. Okay, and we're gonna pop that in the pan. So with the rest of this, I like to cut it in half. And I usually encourage, for knife safety, cutting on a flat surface of your vegetable. So normally I would say cut it on this side, but because pepper skins can be really hard to cut through unless you have a very good sharp knife, which not everybody has, I like to turn it over and go from the inside, the fleshy side, right? And just slice across that way into these nice long strips, and kind of using the curvature of the pepper here to guide my knife along the way. So now you have these strip pieces, kind of bundle them up like a nice bundle of sticks. Tuck your fingers, right, everybody? We're gonna make sure, especially that little thumb likes to hang out, keep all of that out of the way. Make sure you're using your kitchen knives safely. Okay, so now you can see everything is nice and small. Add that in with our onion. Let's do that with one more half here. And bell peppers are a wonderful source of fiber. They're very low calorie. They also contain high amounts of vitamin C. A lot of people don't think of peppers as being a good source of vitamin C, but one bell pepper has 170% of your recommended daily value of vitamin C. So some of that, unfortunately, with the heat, it does get cooked out, but some of it will remain. But 170%, I think we can stand for a little bit of it to be cooked out. All right, so we have our onion, we have our pepper. We're gonna add our garlic here, already chopped up. Kind of saute that all together, get it nice and soft and fragrant. So a couple of things. If you're sauteing and you're noticing that, that it's sticking, you might not have quite enough oil or liquid in your pan. So you can always add a little bit of vegetable broth or a splash of water to help kind of get it to unstick and make sure that it doesn't burn. It smells really, really good. All right. And let's not forget, we're gonna add some salt and pepper into this dish. So you may notice I have a really nice setup here, right? So this is called mise en place, which means put into place. So basically, chefs love to do this because it keeps them really organized, it keeps them on task and focused. So similarly, everything that I needed for this recipe is right here. I know that I have all the ingredients I need, so you don't have to run out into the, go to the store in the middle of your cooking. That's no fun, right? So you always want to make sure you're well prepared. You make your list ahead of time, and then you have all your ingredients ready to go. All right, so I'm just going to show you how nice this looks. See, it's nicely softened. The onions are slightly golden, and they go from being this really opaque color to more translucent. So that is how you can kind of tell when your onions are ready. When they've softened, they're going from that opaque to translucent state. And the smell, of course, is a good way to know too. They smell amazing. All right, our next step here is going to be to add our meat. Now this part is a little bit tricky. You may want to have some tongs nearby to help kind of chop it into the mixture. So I'm going to just scoop this in, and it's going to go from being this pink color to being sort of a grayish color. And that is really completely normal. That's actually what you want. You don't want to see any pink in this recipe. So just kind of mixing that all together, chopping it up. You know what? I'm going to switch hands. I'm right-handed, so I try to make sure I use my right hand for things like this. So again, I'm just mixing this all up, making sure that I'm getting no pink will be left here. So just keep in mind, of course, when you're working with meat, right, like turkey or chicken or fish, you don't want to cross-contaminate. So for example, my spoon just touched the raw meat and I placed it on my cutting board. So I want to be really careful, right? I'm not going to use this cutting board for any more food preparation unless it's going into this pan with everything else. So that's really, really important. So for those of you that aren't really familiar with turkey, most of us are, but with Thanksgiving around the corner, it's on everybody's mind. Turkey is actually a native bird to North America, and it is hunted in the wild as well as raised on farms, of course. And turkey is a wonderful source of protein, as we are focusing on protein today as well. 90 grams of turkey, which is about 2 thick slices, contains only 120 calories and 25 grams of protein, as well as lots and lots of B vitamins. So that's another reason we're enjoying it today. There are a couple of other things in turkey that are very good for us, such as selenium and zinc. And I mentioned the B vitamins. Those are really helpful for supporting your energy and for the formation of red blood cells. So there's all kinds of good things in turkey for us. That said, we are using a lean turkey today, right? So the lean turkey has less saturated fat in it. And of course, for all of our heart health friends out there, we want to make sure that if we're enjoying meat, it's extremely lean, right? So no saturated fat in our meat. And that, of course, will help to protect our hearts. So I have about a pound or so of our turkey meat in here. And I love this recipe because, you know, it is a meat-based recipe, but there's lots of veggies in here too, right? I'd say it's about 50-50 when you look at, you know, if you looked at it in terms of weight, I'd say it's about half meat, but half vegetables too. So for you, you folks out there, maybe with kids in the household that might not be so veggie friendly or excited about eating vegetables, I love this recipe because it kind of sneaks them in a nice healthy way. So I'm noticing here our meat is no longer pink. It's broken up in really nice small pieces. And I just, you know, you can see me, I keep kind of working this pan, right? Keep kind of breaking up any big chunks. Let me show you what we're looking at here. Okay, so you can see it's nice, it's small, it's broken up, there's no pink. And we're gonna go ahead and finish this recipe off with our sauces. So we're gonna be using some ketchup today. If you can find again, low sugar, low sodium kind of ketchup, that's what you wanna use. So this is our ketchup, just about half a cup or so. You can add a little more if you like. We might add some more. Let's see how we do. We're adding some barbecue sauce. So this is about a quarter cup. This is gonna give it a really nice smoky taste. And again, use whatever variety of barbecue sauce that you like, but try to find something that's low sodium, low sugar. Read the labels, read the ingredients, see what's in your food, everybody. All right, and let's add our Worcestershire sauce. I always have trouble saying that one. All right, and our mustard, just about a teaspoon or so of mustard. And then again, you know, mustard contains salt. So just be mindful when you are seasoning your recipes. You want to know how much salt is in all of these condiments before you add salt to the pan, because otherwise you're going to end up with way too much salt. A good antidote, actually, if you do have too much salt in a recipe, happens to everybody, is an acid. So if you add a little bit of lime juice or a little bit of lemon juice, that'll help to kind of balance out the saltiness. So this is pretty much done here. I'm looking at it. I want just a little bit more. I want just a little bit more sauce. So I'm going to add a bit more ketchup to this. Really get it to be that nice saucy texture. Yeah, that's it. So I probably added about a quarter cup more, but I think I had a little bit more than a pound of turkey. Okay, so this smells amazing. Again, this is going to be even better tomorrow because all the flavors will have had time to sit together. All right, so the last step to this recipe, which I love, is to add some cheese. Again, if you can find a low-fat cheese, you know, just do small changes can make a big impact, right? So switching from beef to turkey, switching from full fat to low fat, over time, these small changes will make a big difference. So here's our cheese. We're gonna go ahead and sprinkle this on top. And I'm gonna pop the lid on here. I'm just using a shredded low-fat cheddar today, but again, you use whatever kind of cheese you enjoy and is healthier. Let's pop the lid on there, scoot this stuff out of the way, and let's check on our soup. So Catherine, do we have any questions about our sloppy Joe recipe?
Yes, Chef Emily. Jackie actually asked, when you say a large potato, what is the measurement of that? Is it a cup?
That's a great question, Jackie. So a large potato, the one we use today, I would say is closer to a cup and a half, you know, a heaping cup. Let's put it that way, a heaping cup. Yeah, great question, thank you.
And a second question, Chef Emily, is from Barbara. Is there a substitute for smoked paprika? She finds that she actually cannot find that in her supermarket.
Oh, okay. So this was for the soup recipe that we made, right? The
That's
soup
right.
we added. Okay. So you can use liquid smoke. That you can find usually pretty easily, but you can leave it out if you don't, you know, if you can't find it. I would say the second choice is the liquid smoke. And then, you know, the third choice would be just to use a regular paprika. That would be fine. Any other questions?
So that's all for now.
Fantastic. All right. So let's check on our soup here. It's nice. It's thick. I want to give you guys a nice close up here without pouring it all over the counter. Here you go. You can see it, right? And let's go ahead. We're going to actually partially blend this. So I have an immersion blender here. You could scoop out a couple of cups, put it into a blender, and then you could just blend it that way. Or if you wanted to, you could use this tool. It's called an immersion blender. Just be very careful because your soup is so hot. You want to make sure that you keep your immersion blender straight up and down. Don't tip it side to side because then the soup could splatter out and you could hurt yourself. The other thing is keep it below liquid. All right. So just like Paul's submarine, it has to be below the surface. So you can see I'm just kind of moving it up and down. All right, and this is done. So let's get this out of our way, and I'm gonna show you how this looks when it is served here. Okay, so take a nice, beautiful ladleful, pop that right into the bowl. Looks really, really good. I want it just a little more full, nice serving. Okay, and then you can top it with your prepared parsley garnish here. So pretty. All right, so let's make our dessert next, and then we'll put together our sloppy Joe sandwiches. So this one's really fun and simple and easy to put together, you know, in a dash if you want to do something really festive. Show you the end result. Here you can see the red, white, and blue. If you wanted to achieve this, you could either use whipped cream or yogurt. Again, if you're trying to make it a little bit healthier, you could go for the yogurt. So you could use either, you know, yogurt of course has wonderful probiotics, which are really great for our gut health too, or the whipped cream, up to you. So we're using a parfait glass here. And again, this is the easiest thing to put together, right? But it looks really festive and fun. And of course it's healthy because it's full of berries. So we're gonna add our red, some of our strawberries, kind of pack those in there. And our white, so I have our whipped cream. Let's add our blue. Got some nice blueberries here. Pop those on top. Okay, and then the last thing, I like to finish it off with just a little more, just a nice little swirl here. So I'm kind of whenever you're using a piping bag, you actually put pressure from the top. A lot of people will squeeze with the bottom hand. So you twist the top, you squeeze from the top, and the bottom hand is just your guide, okay? All right, let's add a few. These are our silver sprinkles. make pretend stars. So our little flag here. And then if you wanted to, so you see how quick and easy that was to put together. If you wanted to, you could do what I did here, which is like fan your strawberries. So the way that you would do that, you hold your strawberry face up. I do this with a smaller knife, a paring knife, and it's sort of similar to what we did with the onion, where we're gonna cut through, but we're not gonna cut all the way through. So just making very, very thin slices, but not all the way through. I like to leave the green on there too. All right, so you cut just a few slices across, and then you can press it to get that really pretty, there it is, that really pretty fan look. Okay, pop that on there. All right, do we have any questions about our dessert, Catherine? And then I'm gonna put together our sandwich.
Chef Emily, not a question, just a couple of comments that some of our guests, including Corrine, are interested in making a vegetable version of that. So maybe to substitute the turkey with tofu.
Oh, okay. So if you are interested in making a veggie version of Sloppy Joe, I wouldn't use tofu. I would actually use what's called tempeh. It is a fermented soybean. You can find it actually at most grocery stores. I get it over in Stop and Shop or ShopRite. And what I do with the tempeh is I grate it on the largest holes of my box grater, so it kind of looks like ground meat, and you could use that instead. Great question, thank you. Even healthier versions, oh my gosh. All right, everybody, let's put together our sandwich here. So I just added a little bit of nice greens here for presentation, and we're using whole wheat buns today. So again, small changes, big impact, right? So instead of using your regular white burger bun, you can use a whole wheat variety, which includes all three parts of the wheat, the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. So all three parts, higher in fiber, and more fiber means a slower absorption of sugars into the bloodstream, which is overall gonna help us manage our blood sugar. Okay. Wowie. All right, everyone. I just want to show you how delicious this looks. It's bubbling, the cheese is melted, it smells amazing. Okay. And the Sloppy Joe, if you're not familiar with the origin story, popular stories suggest that the Sloppy Joe was invented by a cook named Joe, no shocker there, in a cafe in Iowa in the 1930s. So Joe actually added tomato sauce to this loose meat, to his loose meat sandwiches, and the rest is history. So the sandwich, of course, is extremely popular with children and adults alike, and it's a staple at food cafeterias as well as on mess hall menus. So when I asked my cousin who served in the military what his favorite kind of mess hall meal was, he said the Sloppy Joes is what he always looked forward to. So I am in honor of him. I'm making this today. Here we go. You can pop that right on top. And just to make it really festive, boop. There you go. There is your homemade, slightly healthier Sloppy Joe. So those are our recipes for today. We have our navy bean soup, our Sloppy Joe, and our berry parfait. I want to make sure you can all see those. And, you know, please get inspired, keep cooking, and stay well, everybody. I'm going to turn it over to Paul for some final remarks. Thank you for tuning in.
Well, thank you, Emily. And before we do our final part of our piece, I wanted to give one shout out to all of the MSs, all the cooks, all the people who do cook in the military. They do a great job. One quick story: I was up in Pittsfield, and we were at a small restaurant, and I noticed on the walking in that the person had submarine emblem on. And so I read the article, and I found out the chef was actually a former submariner, and he was a cook, an MS as well. Well, he came out because we just I wanted to let him know that, you know, we had a great meal, and he had this one specific sandwich, this meatloaf sandwich that was great. And he came out, we got talking. Sure enough, he was asked, because he was in the military, because he was a cook on a submarine, the captain liked his food, and then an admiral liked his food. And then sure enough, that MS ended up at the White House and cooked during the Clinton administration. His story is that President Clinton liked his sandwiches so much that even though they keep track of everything, President Clinton would say to him, we don't have to keep track of all the sandwiches that I'm eating because my wife might not like that. So that might be stories told out of school, but I wanted to share that. The MSs and all the cooks have done a great job. At this time, I invite all the participants here on Zoom, if you could unmute for a moment, if you could unmute your devices, and we're going to offer a round of applause to all of our veterans and their families.
Thank you for your service.
Excellent idea.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Emily and Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Happy
Veterans Day.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
For your service.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hey guys, hi girls. I got to say hi to my girls up there.
We can